Hey guys, I'm here to do my January wrap up. The first book that I finished was H is for Hawk by Helen MacDonald, and this is a memoir about Helen and how she loses her father, and then kind of to deal with the grief, she decides to raise a goshawk, which is one of the most ferocious species of hawks, and it talks about her throughout this process and throughout her training the hawk. She learns all about the struggle with grief and how to overcome grief, and just learns a lot about her life. And this was really, really good. I enjoyed it all the way through, and it was a 4-star read for me. Next up is another 4-star read, and that was A Portable Shelter by Kirsty Logan. This is a short story collection that follows, it starts out and it's 2 women who are about to give birth to their first child, and they decide that they are only ever going to tell their baby the truth. And so they don't want to tell her any stories because they're kind of perceiving them as lies or as bending the truth. But while one of them is asleep, one of the women tells the baby stories, and then while the other one's at work, the pregnant woman tells the baby stories. And so these are all of the stories that they're telling the baby, and it was so wonderful. And there were some darker ones. They all reminded me of fairy tales, and so they were pretty magical, but they had some pretty deep and thoughtful issues in them. I really, really enjoyed the entire thing, and yeah, 4-star read for this one. Next up, I finally read The Magicians by Lev Grossman. I have owned this book for I don't even know how long, and I've been wanting to get to it, and so this definitely pushed me to pick it up, and I really, really liked this a lot. This follows the main character. His name is Quentin, and he is growing up in the Upper East Side in New York City, and he kind of has always felt like there has to be something more to life than what he's living. And one day he stumbles upon this magical world and this magical school where he finds out that magic is actually real, and he gets enrolled in this school and meets, friends, and it's so good and so much more complex than that. And people have talked about this being the grown-up Harry Potter, but it's so different than Harry Potter. The only thing that's similar is that they're at a magical school. Everything else is completely different. But yeah, I'm really excited to continue on with the series, and I definitely want to try the TV show too once I finish it. So if you haven't picked this up yet, I would highly recommend that you do. I think that it definitely lives up to the hype. Next up, I read 3 Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake, and this follows a fantasy world where there are 3 sisters that are born, and then each triplet has a certain power that they possess, and then when they come of age, they basically battle each other and try to kill one another so that only one of them will be queen. I thought that the premise was really interesting in this. I was frustrated because there was a love triangle, and I hate love triangles in YA books particularly, because I feel like almost every YA book has a love triangle, and I just don't think that that's realistic. Like, has anyone ever been in a situation like that before? Because I don't know anybody who's ever been in a real love triangle like that. So I also really wanted the queens to be more powerful. I wanted them to be, really fierce female characters, and I just didn't feel like that was the case. So I did enjoy it. It was a really quick read, and I will continue on with the series to see where it goes from here, but it was only a 3-star read for me. Next up, I read Hold Your Own by Kate Tempest, and this is a poetry collection. I really enjoyed this. I've never been a huge fan of poetry. I feel like a lot of it goes over my head as much as I try, but I felt like this was very approachable and really interesting. She does a lot of things with gender with gender and family relationships and war, and it was just really heart-wrenching and beautiful, so I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I read The Monsters of Templeton, and this is by Lauren Groff, and this follows a young woman who is studying to be an archaeologist, and she goes to Alaska with a select group of students and her professor to do this dig on an ancient skeleton. And while she is there, she starts an affair with her professor, and she becomes pregnant with his baby. And so she decides that she's going to go back home to Templeton, which is a very small town on the East Coast, and basically live with her mother again until she figures out what she's going to do with her life. this book was really fun. It follows this really small town and all of the characters that live there, and it's very quirky. And right when she returns home, they actually discover this sea monster in it's called Lake Glimmerglass, that is a part of Templeton, and it's like basically like a Loch Ness monster kind of. And they discover him, so there's definitely some magical elements to it. She also has a ghost in her house that she like communicates with, and it's just really interesting. And at first I gave it 3 stars because I wasn't blown away by it, and it was just kind of so-so. And I don't like this word, but it just kind of reminded me of like a chick lit sort of book, because the overall arching story is like a love story and like a coming of age, and so it just felt kind of like twee to me. But I actually think that it's more a 3.5 or 4-star read after letting it sit for a while, because I really did enjoy the characters and they've really stuck with me. It was a super quick read, and it's done in a really interesting way. There are like pictures and letters and lots of different historical things as she's researching the town and her family. There's like, you know, family trees and just all sorts of really good stuff, mixed media, which I always enjoy. So I would recommend this one as well. Next up, I read Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling, and I loved this one as well. I think I ended up giving it 5 stars at the end just because I had so much fun. I actually listened to the audiobook and read it, and the audiobook is so good. The person who reads it is absolutely brilliant. But yeah, this follows a private investigator, and he is a war veteran who has lost his leg in battle, and now he is just a private detective. And he gets hired to take on a case to investigate the suicide of a famous celebrity, a young woman, and he gets wrapped up in this, and at the same time he gets a temporary assistant named Robin, and she ends up helping out with the case. And I don't know, their characters were both so strong and so likable, and I just felt so drawn into the story, and I couldn't help but root for them, and just kind of like on the edge of my seat. I couldn't stop listening to it, and I just really, really loved it. So I cannot wait to read the next ones in the series, and this one is another one that really lives up to the hype. Next, I read Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold, and this is very well known. This is one of the reasons why I chose it for my shelf slam this month, because we're supposed to be reading overhyped books. And so this is a movie, which I haven't seen yet, but this book has been a huge bestseller for years and years. This follows Susie, who in the 1970s is kidnapped and murdered as a young girl, and then that happens right in the beginning of the story, and then throughout the story she is in heaven and she's looking down on her family and trying to help them find her killer. And I think I didn't read this for so long because I was worried about the fact that I'm a mother, and it's difficult for me to read about horrible things happening to children because I can't help but, you know, put my kids in that situation, and it's just really difficult for me. But I actually think that that particular part is just the very beginning, and it's actually handled pretty well. There's not a lot of detail, and it was not easy for me to get through it, but a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. But as much as I thought that this was going to be maybe creepy and unsettling, more than anything, it is inspiring and uplifting, and it deals a lot with our families and our families' relationships and parenting, and I just found it really, really touching, and I know that I will be thinking about it for such a long time, and I really understand why so many people love this book because it is really phenomenal. I listened to the audiobook with this as well as I was reading it, and Alice Sebold reads it herself, and it is fantastic, so I can't recommend it enough. And I think I gave this one 5 stars as well. Next up, I read Sandman Volume 1 by Neil Gaiman, and this was so disappointing. I was super bummed. This was my worst read of the month for sure, and I guess part of it is that I didn't really do a whole lot of research on it. I thought that this was like a horror graphic novel series, but it actually kind of coincides with superheroes and like the DC universe, like the League of Justice, and you know, there's certain parts in this where they talk about the Joker and Batman and Arkham Asylum and stuff like that, which is fine. But I was thinking that this was just a different universe entirely. And so since I'm not a huge like typical comic book reader, I think that I missed out on a lot of things that I maybe would have got if I was more used to that world. I don't think I'll be continuing on with the series. I only gave this 2 stars and I really just felt kind of bored by it, honestly. I can never remember a time not wanting to read a graphic novel. I'm the type of person that reads a graphic novel in one sitting, and this was not the case with this, and so I was super disappointed in it. Next up, I read Illuminae, and this is by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is a YA sci-fi book that is written in a really interesting format. It has all sorts of mixed media and things like that. This follows Katie and Ezra as they live on these giant space shuttles, and at some point there is a virus that gets released, and let's just say that there are zombies in space. So that's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, definitely should read it. I gave it 5 stars. I had so much fun reading it. Loved it. Well, I read Lovely Bones, Sandman, and Illuminae when I was doing 24 and 48 readathon. And then next up it was Diversathon. The first book that I finished was Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. And this is a nonfiction book that follows Brian. He's a lawyer whose mission in life is to help men who've been wrongfully convicted and that are on death row. And this book is probably one of the easiest 5 stars I've ever given a book. It is so powerful and absolutely heartbreaking. I cried, I don't even know how many times, because the things that some of these people have gone through and the injustice that some of these people have faced is just absolutely horrible. And this book is so important. I think everybody needs to read this book. Please pick this up. This is another one where the audiobook is read by Brian Stevenson, which makes it even more powerful. So please read this book. Definite 5 stars. Next up, I read On the Edge of Gone by Corinne Dwivas, and I was so off when I thought what this book was about. I thought it was a sci-fi book that followed a same-sex couple, but I don't know where I got that, because that is not what this is about. It is a sci-fi novel, it is YA, but it follows Denise, who actually has autism. Basically, a meteor is going to hit the Earth, and this is in like 2035, I want to say. And so there have been a bunch of spaceships that have taken off and, you know, rescued human beings. And if you're still on Earth, you're supposed to take shelter until the meteor has hit and you can resurface, basically. And so, well, this is super adventurous and compelling. I found this to be one of the most accurate portrayals of an autistic person I've ever read. I have previously worked in childcare and worked with a variety of autistic children, and this was portrayed in such a good way. And I think that a lot of young people who read this book will be able to not only relate to it, but also to learn from it. So I really think that this was a wonderful tool to get that across while making an enjoyable story. Still, I didn't absolutely love it. I wasn't blown away, so this was a 3.5 star read for me. And then my last completed book for Diversathon was Shelter by Jun Young, and this lives up to the hype like no other. I mean, people have been raving about this on BookTube, and they have a reason to be. This follows a young man, Kyung, and him and his wife have been having money problems. They have a young son named Ethan, and one day when they are meeting with a real estate agent to list their house for sale, they're looking out the back window and they see Kyung's mother coming up to the house. She is completely naked and she has obviously been injured in some way. And so the story just goes so fast from there, and you find out that Kyung's parents have been held hostage, and basically people held them hostage to try to get money from them. And this just slowly starts to unravel all of these secrets and lies within their family, and all of these things that Kyung had to endure since he was a child. And this was just so compelling and so heartbreaking, and it follows, you know, this family as they slowly spiral into this horrible despair. And anyways, it is one that is just going to stick with me for so long, and I still just cannot stop thinking about it. So I would really, really recommend this one, and it was a 5-star read. So those are all of the books that I read in January. I hope you guys had a great reading month as well. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite book was that you read this month, or your least favorite book that you read this month. I'd love to hear about it. Until next time, happy reading, guys.